Wysteria, energy, twister. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and the Encyclopedia of Fairies. Though we are on fairies, we're actually now on aliens. However, a question that comes up for these who do study fairies and folklore, of course, is what, if any, connection might exist between fairies and extraterrestrials? There is certainly no consensus on the topic, with avid ufologists viewing fairies as a previous understanding of aliens, and many fairyologists seeing aliens and UFOs as a modern way to interpret fairies and fairy encounters. Fairies have been a part of belief in folklore for as long as we have written stories from the various cultures we find them in. However, as we have moved, culturally, into the modern and postmodern period, fairies have largely, in the dominant culture of America, become regulated to children's stories, nostalgia. This left a contextual void for people having experience to use to explain what they were experiencing. The void was filled by fiction and film, as pop culture embraced the idea of extraterrestrials, and our cultural consciousness became saturated by these new stories. The first aliens appear in fiction as early as 1887 in a short story titled Les Civius, and in Hollywood in the silent films of the early 1900s. The idea, however, really bloomed post-World War II in both speculative fiction and film. The first UFO sighting in the US is thought to have occurred in 1947. The first reported abduction in 1961. This timeline is roughly synchronous with a shift to viewing fairies in America as twee nature spirits intending to minimize their potential danger to humans. When we compare fairy lore and alien and UFO lore, we can see some striking similarities. In traditional fairy lore, fairies are well known to steal people, sometimes permanently, sometimes temporarily. In cases where people are returned, they may have terrifying stories of their experience and may have physical marks. In turn, alien abduction stories also feature aliens stealing people, sometimes for benign purposes, or obscure ones, sometimes for cruel reasons. The people are returned with nightmarish memories and sometimes physical marks. The Sluisihi are noted to lift people up into the sky, and they are, as well as some other types of fairies, were said to carry people across the sky or fly with them, returning them later. Modern UFO encounters sometimes include people being taken up into alien crafts and carried away only to be returned to Earth. The reason for taking people, including forced reproduction, are also consistent between both fairy stories and alien abductions, although how the two play out historically versus currently, they do vary. Time is often noted to move differently in the world of fairy. So too, those who describe alien abductions. They often talk about weird issues with time. Particularly in fairy, it has been said that what feels like a day there will be much longer amounts of time here, and this is also said for alien abductions. People describe being gone for minutes that were really hours, or hours that were really days. Some fairy encounters, including those with beings like the Moran, including sleep paralysis and overwhelming fear that occur to a person in their bed. In the same way, alien encounters are sometimes described as happening to a person who is sleeping and wakes to find themselves unable to move and terrified. The descriptions, both types of encounters, look almost identical when the type of being isn't actually mentioned. Although the modern alien encounters usually involve abduction as well, which the Moran do not. Food can play a role in both fairy encounters and alien encounters. In traditional fairy encounters, fairies would often offer food to people, usually with the intent of trapping the person in fairy so that they could not leave. In some alien encounters, the person is offered food of various sorts, as well, although the intention is very unclear. In fairy lore, when the food was refused, there are stories of the fairies trying to force a person to eat the food or drink the liquid, or physically punishing them for refusing. In this same way, in some alien abduction stories, there have been accounts of people forced to eat or drink substances, in some cases violently. Fairies were noted to dance in circles and leave behind fairy rings in their wake. These could be rings of mushrooms or of darker or lighter grass. UFOs have noted to leave circular marks in places where they have been landing, sometimes flattened grass, sometimes burnt areas. Similarly, the idea of strange lights being attributed to fairies has a long history in folklore, often associated with danger. While UFOs are described as both lights in the sky as well as strange lights seen through trees, these sights afterwards of both types are noted to have strange properties and effects on people. Descriptions of alien beings are generally in line with the provided by science fiction and folklore, tells us that the good people can use glamour to appear however they want, and to make our surroundings appear to us however they want, making it possible that the aliens people are seeing are fairies using glamour. If we expect them to look like what science fiction has taught us, aliens will look like it's possible that is exactly what we see during an alien experience or abduction, because our consciousness is programmed to see them this way. And they may know this, therefore put themselves as these beings. There are people who will say that we see far fewer fairy encounters today and fewer fairy abductions. Yet, now we have the phenomena of alien encounters and abductions, which have many of the same hallmarks. One might argue that the fairies are no less active, but have simply switched how people are perceiving their activity, so that those who believe in or are open to believing in aliens get aliens, while those who believe in fairies continue to have experience more in the line with older folklore. Fairies used to be feared, and that fear had power. Aliens still are feared, as an unknown and technologically superior factor. For further on this subject, it might be a good idea to read Passport to Magonia and Trojan Feast. Both of these discuss fairy and aliens as an interwoven subject. Now that I find interesting, and I will tell you guys why. Because everything I have just spoken is completely true. And I have my own beliefs. I'll only talk about those with members. I'm not going to discuss that here. But yeah, it's one of the most interesting topics indeed. And like I say, we all have our own beliefs. I have mine. But I'm definitely not yet ready to say aliens are not fairies, let's put it that way. Just saying. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Encyclopedia of Fairies, and many blessings. Wysteria, energy, twister.